What's good? Welcome to another episode of Sensible Reactions. We're back with another video. Hey, I'm ShAyee, and what I have is my personal knowledge and opinion on the law is the universal laws, okay? I don't make them. You know what I'm saying? But listen, welcome to another episode of Sensible Reactions. Not official. That was not an official intro. It just is what it is. We going with the flow. Okay? All right. So listen, we're about to go ahead and get into reacting to, of course, our next good old crash course. All right, because your brain is complicated. It is. So we're gonna get to know it. All right, that's what we're gonna be doing. Okay, class is in session. Everybody need to get their notebooks out. Need you to get it together. Get in the comment section, and yeah, we need to talk. So I'm not gonna hold y'all good people up because I got to go, and y'all got to learn. Okay, all right. So what we're gonna be learning about on today? This is going to pretty much be a mental health test. Okay, we'll be doing some mental health testing. We'll be testing out your senses. We gonna make sure you good up here. You know, we're gonna make sure you don't need to be getting that little check. No, I'm just joking. I'm just joking. You know, speaking of little check, why was that a thing? Do you know so many people mess themselves up doing that? Like on some real shit. And now, in real time, where shit's changing, it's getting harder and harder for them to be able to make it do what it do. You know, because they gotta undo so much. And then one thing I want to say, man, that for people who doing this for real, like, and ain't nothing wrong with you, they put you on their medication and they start giving you that stuff, and stuff start and problems you didn't really have. Now you really got all for a check just so you don't have to clock in and go to a 9 to 5. You know what I'm saying? I just want you to do better. Okay, that's all I'm gonna say. Is do better. That's it. That's all I'm gonna say. Whatever that look like for you, just do better. You know what I'm saying? Have some sense with this. Sensible reactions. Of course, we gotta make this make sense. Okay? Just be mindful of what you're doing. Cause girl, I remember the whole shebang. That was a thing at one point in time. I'm gonna go and do this and do that so you can get a check. Then tell me they had a fake brick. Girl, let me go. Let me go. Cause let's go ahead and get into the video. Cause girl, people be wild. For real, for real.
What do you see in this image? A scary face, a couple of squirrels fighting? Or this one, a squashed frog, or tumbling poodles, a bleeding bat? Herman Rorschach one.
I never understood how people seen so much elaborateness in this. This is just like artwork. Even though I paint, even though I draw, even though I do things, even though I like abstract art, it's very seldom that I get to let me say this. The real true abstract art for me is the clouds. Like that's the best true, like I have not seen anything like it yet. They come up with the different and it just hit. I'm pretty sure it's an artist out here that is. I have not come across them. But like when it comes to these things, I never really got much out of them. Like I just see paint blobs. You know what I'm saying? Like this right here, this is giving me nothing. Right? Now I can start to look at it and like dissect it as a whole. It's not giving me anything. This part that I'm looking at right here in the middle at the top look like a uterus. You know what I'm saying? With with the eggs. You know what I'm saying? Right on each side look like Mickey Mouse. Okay. So like I can dissect it in that way, but typically it does not look like a whole thing to me. Except for something that's like a butterfly or a fucking horse or something.
The squirrels fighting? Or this one, a squashed frog, or tumbling poodles, a bleeding bat? Herman Rorschach wants to know. He wanted to know. He's dead now. He believed that your answers, what you saw in the ink, said something about your personality. Rorschach was a Swiss psychoanalyst who in his youth was fascinated by the childhood game of making pictures.
That's why I was looking at this whole time on these back walls, because that's all that is on his back walls, if you have not noticed. But girl, I always be like, what?
pictures out of inkblots called klexography. As an adult, Rorschach was intrigued with Carl Jung's use of word association in attempts to access patients' unconscious minds. Jung would ask patients to say the first thing that came to mind when they saw words like dead or window or abuse, and Rorschach thought, why not do the same thing with amorphous blobs? So he'd show a patient a series of inkblots and record what they saw to determine how people projected their personal associations onto random shapes. Assuming there were important differences between those who saw dancing bunnies versus those who saw severed screaming heads, he drew conclusions about a patient's personality. And yeah, this was controversial. Some clinicians still do think that the Rorschach test can be a helpful
I think it can be, at least thus far. I think it can be, because what you see in your imagination and what you see in general, because it's not always just imagination, in my opinion. Yeah, I feel it can definitely give insight as to what's going on in that big, beautiful Scully
diagnostic tool when used correctly and cautiously. But others remain critical of the test, calling them unscientific and unreliable. It's even been called the Dracula of psychological tests because no one has been able to drive a stake through its heart yet. So I guess this is the part where I apologize
get on
for
my
the set
nerves.
design. Sorry. But love it or hate it, the Rorschach test.
They get on my nerves. They get on my nerves if it's not scientifically. It cannot be scientifically proven. Real scientists know it's phenomenons that happen all the time. Real scientists know that it's a lot of random shit that always occurs that you're not going to be able to tell exactly why or how it works. Everybody feel like they can explain everything. Everything can't be explained, baby. Okay? Because you don't even understand it all just yet.
It is one of the many methods psychologists have used in an ongoing quest to understand personality. And of all the concepts we cover in this course, personality is one of the most complex and one of the most contested. This is where we bring in the household names, not just Rorschach, but Freud and Jung, as well as other influential thinkers like Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers. It's where some of the most familiar concepts in early psychology come into play, ones that people with even passing knowledge of the field have heard of. The ego, the Oedipus complex, penis envy, inferiority complexes, even the idea of self-help itself. Whether you've heard of these things as hard facts or simply historical curiosities, these notions represent the starting points for some of the biggest and most compelling questions in the field. But they all come back to the same question. What makes us who we are?
Well, there's a lot of things that make us who we are.
With defining things, personality, you think you know what that means, but we're going to define it as your distinctive and enduring characteristic patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving. And psychologists typically study personality in two broad ways. One, by trying to understand differences in specific characteristics, like introvertedness versus extrovertedness, and two, by looking at how all the various parts of each person mesh together as a whole. Basically, what are our characteristics and how do they combine to make me, me, and you? And guess what? As you might expect, there are a number of competing perspectives on personality theory. 4, to be exact. The first, and one of the most
I feel like that whole introvert extrovert thing is a whole nother thing too, though, because I feel like it honestly sometimes could depend on the person, the people you're around, whether you are more extrovert or introverted.
Influential has been the psychoanalytic perspective, first championed by
I don't think it's cut and dry.
Friend Sigmund Freud. It was through his clinical observation of patients that Freud came to theorize the existence of the unconscious. For Freud, the unconscious represented a vast reservoir of often unacceptable and frequently hard to tolerate thoughts, feelings, desires, and memories, usually involving lots of weird sex stuff. Gotta point out, by the way, that the Freudian unconscious is a different thing from the contemporary idea of non-conscious information processing, when we're like processing information that we don't know we're processing. Freud's thing is, you know, a lot more diddly.
Girl, Freud, I'm telling you, Freud is a trip. Freud was the out of the box thinking.
But the non-conscious is like empirically validated, a real thing that we study now. Anyway, Freud believed that our personalities are largely shaped by the enduring conflict between our impulses to do whatever we feel like and our restraint to control those urges, between our pleasure-seeking aggressive urges and our inner social control over them. He theorized our minds as being divided into 3 interacting parts: the id, the ego, and the superego, that provide the battleground for this internal conflict that shaped our personalities. You can think of the classic Freudian mind like this iceberg.
So far.
It's mostly hidden, and that big underwater chunk is your id, your unconscious, primitive, and instinctive self. Freud thought the id was all about sex and aggression, the so-called pleasure principle of immediate gratification. To him, infants were all id.
Okay, hold on. Wait, we're going to address that in a second. Because, yeah, I'm like, I agree. But hold on, wait a second. I don't know about the last part. But, okay, the id, I'm with you. The sex and aggression, I can see that. I'm now thinking, because it's starting to sound like it's coming from the chakra standpoint. You know what I'm saying? With the root chakra. So it's kind of making some sense. And then you get up to the sacral. You know what I'm saying? It's about creativity. And then you got ego and creativity. You got, you know what I'm saying? You got, excuse me, in creativity, you got sexual energy. And then in the solar plexus, you got that confidence that comes in. And that may be where the because that's like it can become ego, you know what I'm saying? So maybe that's what
That's in part why babies freak out when they don't get a snack like right now instead of just taking a deep breath for a second. For that matter, a lot of the off-the-wall celebrities and dictators
it still can be that confidence. It still can be in that sexual energy and the creativity because all right, let's keep going.
Big ids. Ids like a honey badger. They don't care. Eventually, kids develop the ego part of their personality, that largely conscious component that's charged with dealing with reality. The ego works on getting the id what it wants in a reasonable, timely, and realistic way without, getting arrested or beaten up. The final aspect to form in Freud's personality trifecta is the superego, the Jiminy Cricket voice of our conscience that represents not just the real, but also the ideal. As you can imagine, the superego and the id don't much like each other, and it's up to the referee ego.
Okay, all right. So the preconscious is pretty much everything wrapped in one, which I can then agree with that being the heart and the throat chakra, because it's a balance of knowing when to and when to not. It's a balance of when to pull from that upper energy, when to pull from that lower energy, how to bring them all together. I can see that, okay. And then the consciousness and then the ego, I can definitely see being, of course, that crown chakra. Well, the third eye, let's start in order. The third eye chakra, and then that crown chakra. I can definitely see that. I can see that being the case.
But also the ideal. As you can imagine, the superego and the id don't much like each other, and it's up to the referee ego to sort everything out. And it's hard to be the ego.
And basically, you're like the middle, you're divided, you're the middle energy. The heart being that central energy that gotta regulate all this shit out. Okay. Do I want to just be so headstrong and just everything and have no compassion, have no feeling? You know what I'm saying? Everything's good and dry. Or am I going to bring my creativity? Am I going to be liberated? You know what I'm saying? Am I going to
Freud believed that anxiety comes in part from the ego getting all stressed out about losing control over the id and superego. So he proposed that our egos use a series of indirect and unconscious defense mechanisms to protect themselves from this fear. And each person's particular configuration of defense mechanisms in turn makes up part of what we're referring to here as personality. You might already have heard of repression, the defense that's thought to work by banishing any thoughts, feelings, or memories that cause anxiety to the unconscious. And repression, Freud thought, allows our many other defense mechanisms to do their work. Regression, for example, involves a retreat to a more infantile psychosexual stage, like when a second grader sucks their thumb when they're nervous. Reaction formation is kind of like passive aggression. It involves flipping unacceptable impulses like the desire to punch someone in the face with their opposites, like offering them cookies with a fake smile. Projection is when you disguise your own impulses by calling them out in other people, and rationalization is just what it sounds like, when we offer explanations and excuses for our behaviors instead of getting to the real unconscious reasons. Like, yeah, well, I ate 6 Hot Pockets at the party just because I was being social. Displacement is the typical you got yelled at by your boss and then
So far, Freud, I'm here.
Came home and yelled at your roommate. It's when you shift your impulses toward a less threatening victim. And then there's denial, which is when you refuse to believe or sometimes even perceive some kind of
what's that last one?
Unconscious reasons.
Oh, displacement.
Like, yeah, well, I ate 6 Hot Pockets at the party just because I was being social. Displacement is the typical you got yelled at by your boss and then came home and yelled at your roommate. It's when you shift your impulses toward a less threatening victim. And then there's denial, which is when you refuse to believe or sometimes even perceive some kind of painful reality. Like, oh, boyfriend isn't cheating on me. I'm not gonna fail that class, and these pants totally still fit. Our defense mechanisms, as theorized by Freud, are pretty tied in with our personalities. Someone who engages in a lot of denial and not as...
Yeah, Freud talking that talk to me.
As much projection would probably look and act a lot differently from someone who chronically does the reverse. Still, Freud was convinced our personality...
And then also, spiritually speaking, when you know all of these things about yourself, you then can use them to your advantage. For yourself, for your own health and well-being. That's the beautiful part of all of it. And that's the real part of all of it. And this is why I also feel like it's very important that we all speak our mind, even if people don't agree with it. Even if it's dark, you know what I'm saying? Let's keep it real, because the darkness within us exists as well. That's just what it is, right? Now, do it need to be regulated? 9 times out of 10, it definitely does. That goes back to some things he was speaking about earlier, but it definitely needs to be regulated. But the truth is, a lot of things exist within us. It's not all light and it's not all positive. There's also some dark things that reside within us, and it is a thing where you are basically fighting between you have a more dominant anything within you typically. So if that aggressive side is more dominant than your loving side, you can see people who can flip like a switch, as they say. Because that's kind of how that's how they operate. You know what I'm saying? They have both within them in such a way that it's kind of like doing this sometimes. You have some people where, man, it's a little seesaw, you know what I'm saying, way off balance, but you feel me? That's what a learning part about yourself come in at, and then that way you'll know what you need to do to become a more balanced or well-rounded version of yourself. But that whole you fighting between your evil twin, basically. Yeah.
Is form in our first few years as we pass through a series of 5 psychosexual stages, essentially during which the id seeks to get its rocks off in different pleasure-sensitive areas. Infants start out in the oral stage because they get pleasure from eating. From there, a child enters the anal stage, focused on peeing and pooping, then on the phallic stage as they discover their boy and girl bits. It was during this stage that Freud believed the infamous Oedipus complex reared up, characterized by a boy experiencing a form of sexual desire toward his mother and the parallel jealousy or hatred of his father. Freud called from about age 6 to puberty the latency stage, marked by dormant sexual feelings, which eventually evolved into the 5th and final adult genital stage of mature sexual.
People don't like to think about this, and it can get uncomfortable, because initially when I heard it, I'm like, what happened? But as you're breaking this down, I mean, it all makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Do everything happen in every child? No. But yeah, you can. Some kids kind of get it, and some kids, they have to go through the stage. They don't get it yet, you know. So that's what it is. That's why I always, and they think it's like, I guess, cute or something to like publicize. But like when I see the videos of like the boy or the girl being the whole daddy's girl or mama's boy situation, when they get like, they really feel some type of way when other people are on their parents like that. I don't think that's healthy. I don't think that's good. Some people just, she's just a daddy's girl, but as we all know, we know how the daddy's girl and mama's boy stuff can play out. So I feel like, and not even nothing from like a super traumatic standpoint, but just in general. So balance is healthy. Will it always happen? No, but I'm just telling you what's healthy. You know what I'm saying? What's a great balance for us to try to achieve.
Interests. Now, he believed
because I just feel somebody just feeling some type of way. Don't feel no type of way. You know what I'm saying? The only thing we can do is try to better ourselves. Okay, that's the only thing we can do, bro. That's it. It's not a life or death sentence whether you do or you don't. You know, we have different outcomes. Yeah, of course.
Weren't resolved at any of these given stages, a person could develop a fixation or a lingering focus on a younger stage. Like if a baby was overfed or neglected and underfed, they might fixate in the oral stage. An orally fixated adult might seek oral gratification through excessive eating or chain smoking and may develop issues with dependency or aggression. Now, of course, not everyone was on board with Freud's model of personality development. Many of his ideas were controversial and remain so to this day. Even most modern psychoanalysts now dispute the whole Oedipal thing. In fact, while many pioneering psychoanalysts built on Freud's theories, these are so-called neo-Freudians, many disagree with lots of his ideas and instead either emphasize the role of the conscious mind or focus on non-sexual motivations. Take Karen Horney, for instance, a German-born psychoanalyst credited with founding feminist psychology. She wasn't down with the idea that our personalities are primarily shaped by sex and aggression. She especially rejected the notion of penis envy, which she thought was more than a little insulting to women. She actually proposed that...
Okay, wait, hold up, wait.
With founding feminist psychology, she wasn't down with the idea that our personalities are primarily shaped by sex and aggression. She especially rejected...
Now, I don't agree with that as just like being the end all be all, right? But I definitely feel like that sexual and creative energy in those two lower chakras is a real thing. It's a real thing for real. And it makes me go back and forth with the whole idea of and this is for adults, but this gives me a play on the whole idea of how often should one be releasing, whether that's through partners or individual, you know what I'm saying? It made me question celibacy and what does that really look like. And like it makes me just wonder about a few things. It does.
To the notion of penis envy, which she thought was more than a little insulting to women. She actually proposed that womb envy may occur as much in men who are envious they can't give birth. She encouraged patients to take charge of their own mental health and engage in as much in men who are envious they can't give birth. She encouraged patients to take charge of their own mental health and engage in self-help and analysis, believing people were often able to sort of be their own therapists. We mentioned Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychologist.
I do agree with that. I feel like some people can, some people cannot. Some people don't have enough of general rationale to self-help as much as they would probably like to. That's my opinion. I don't feel like everybody can just sit down and help themselves. And I think the problem is if you are that person, go and talk to somebody. You know what I'm saying? Go and do the work. I know it's not cheap, of course. But you also have people in your community that's some pretty decent people, hopefully. If you don't, I understand. I get it. Seek the help on the internet, you know, just through self-help information. You know what I'm saying? And that is another form of you having someone else to help you. But you gotta get the context clues because the light bulb has to come on. If not, it's not gonna be clicking. It's not gonna be clocking to you.
Psychoanalyst. Jung was a friend and disciple of Freud, but eventually theoretical differences took them in different directions. He agreed that the unconscious was a powerful force, but he believed it was more than just a holding cell for repressed sexual thoughts and feelings and memories. Jung believed sexual drive was only part of the equation, and that we're also driven by a need to achieve a full knowledge of self. He also suggested that we have a collective unconscious, a group of shared images or art of took them in. Carl Jung, the famous Swiss psychoanalyst. Jung was a friend and disciple of Freud, but eventually theoretical differences took them in different directions. He agreed that the unconscious was a powerful force, but he believed it was more than just a holding cell for repressed sexual thoughts and feelings and memories. Jung believed sexual drive was only part of the equation, and that we're also driven by a need to...
Yeah, that's why I can't fully agree with Freud on all of that, but I feel like Freud breakdown was pretty good.
Achieve a full knowledge of self. He also suggested that we have a collective unconscious, a group of shared images or archetypes that are universal to all humans, and this was why different cultures share similar myths and imagery. Vienna-born Alfred Adler was another former collaborator of Freud who struck out on his own. Adler agreed with Freud that childhood was important, but he emphasized ongoing social tensions, not sexual ones, as most crucial to the formation of personality. He coined the term inferiority complex and believed that much of our adult behavior is linked to childhood struggles with feeling inferior. In the end, not all of their theories have endured, but Freud and his contemporaries were key to the evolution of psychoanalytic theory because they explored ways in which our mental life and personality may be submerged beneath the veil of consciousness. But the psychoanalytical approach is only one perspective on what makes us who we are. Rather than focusing on how messed up we can be, humanistic theorists focus on the basic goodness of people and how they strive to...
But that goes back to, see, it's not just the goodness, quote unquote. Like, we have both things that reside within us, the light and the dark. Those subconscious things, those conscious things. So we have that light and dark energy though that resides within us. And I also don't believe that all dark energy is negative energy. That's also something that I feel.
To achieve their full potential. In other words, they believe in the potential for personal growth. Abraham Maslow is one of these guys. He believed we're motivated by that pyramid-shaped hierarchy of needs, and that once basic needs are met, like food and shelter and whatnot, we're able to achieve higher goals. Maslow believed the top two rungs of that pyramid are where the real growth in personality takes place. First, with self-actualization, or the need to live up to our full unique potential, and then with self-transcendence, or finding meaning and purpose and identity beyond ourselves. Rather than study only troubled patients, Maslow looked at healthy, creative types with whom he discovered this common thread of self-actualization. self-actualization. Bolstered by a secure sense of self, these people were more sure of themselves, more compassionate, caring, driven, and uneasy around cruelty and pettiness. American psychologist Carl Rogers was another pioneer of humanistic theory who proposed a person-centered perspective on personality. Like Maslow, Rogers believed we're all
Wait, you said, did you say the people that were more confident in themselves? No, let's go back, because I'll make sure I respond correctly.
Rather than study only troubled patients, Maslow looked at healthy, creative types with whom he discovered this common thread of self-actualization. Bolstered by a secure sense of self, these people were more sure of themselves, more compassionate, caring, driven, and uneasy around cruelty and pettiness. American psychologist Carl Rogers...
Okay, that part. They were uneasy around cruelty. Okay. I need to talk to my people real quick. My empaths, my people. Like, I need to talk to y'all. I need my empaths to definitely, I don't want to use the term grow up here, but I really need us to start loving ourselves and knowing ourselves and becoming more confident in ourselves, so that when we do get around people who don't live, who don't feel how we feel, we're not always in a debate, always in an argument, always feeling uneasy, always feeling, do you have to be around them and do you have to make them a part of your life? I do not believe so. I'll give it them who they are. Okay. Is it a situation to where, of course, depending on your age, does it make it a little bit more difficult for you to get away from these people because these people live in the same household as you and you're not old enough to get your own home? Yeah, you just got to make it do what it do. Just why you got to work on your inner self and create your protection, because we can't make people be who we want them to be. People are not going to see the things how we see them, and people are going to press your buttons, especially if they know that you have the feeling. Okay? They know that you can feel. They will definitely try to take you places to when you were unhealed. All right? When they know you can feel, they will definitely try to take you to places to when you were unhealed. Okay? I need you to tap in with you, and I need you to do what you need to do. And that, again, is come back to your center, come back to your peace. That's just it.
Was another pioneer of humanistic theory who proposed a person-centered perspective on personality. Like Maslow, Rogers believed we're all basically good eggs so long as we're nurtured in a growth-promoting environment that he thought required 3 conditions. The first is genuineness, just the idea that parents and teachers should be transparent and open with their feelings. Then there's acceptance. When folks are accepting, people around them won't be... True.
As a parent, be genuine with your kids. As a parent, be genuine with your children. If you are an adult that's not even genuine with yourself, work on yourself. Okay, we talked about this before. You have a child, you need to be working on you, because you are passing all of that BS on. Okay, and this is starting from pregnancy. Again, it should start before pregnancy, but starting during pregnancy is when it should start. If you'd had the baby is 10 now. Oh well, start now where you at. Okay? Let's start where you at. But be genuine and be open and transparent with your kids about emotions. Clearly, you're not going to tell anybody every bit of every emotion that you feel, of course. But like, it's a way that you can tell your kids what's going on without being OD. Like, if mama ain't got it this month, mama ain't got it this month. And it's okay to be without certain things. Okay? The world doesn't end just because you don't have certain things. Does it make it harder? Yeah. Does it end? No. Okay? Do we have an opportunity to get it later? Yes. But be honest with your kids. Be transparent. And try to give them both sides of it. You feel what I'm saying? Just be real, man. Just be fucking real, bro. Like, for real. I think they're trying to put on for your kids just make the situation just not the best. And I know for some people, man, you got that kid who gonna do something about it, and so you don't want to tell them. Okay, that's understandable. If you know you being transparent with your child may turn your child into a person that he don't even need to be, or she don't even need to be at this age just yet. Tread lightly, okay? Tread lightly. Make sure you keep your eye on them. Make sure you tell them what you need to tell them, but then keep your eye on them. Make sure they ain't, you know what I mean? Yeah, I think it's a way to do everything. So, but that's the one thing that I told my mama. I told her I appreciate when she started being transparent and honest with me, instead of just trying to hide it and trying to do it all herself. You know what I'm saying? Because your kids, they're seeing it, one, and two, a lot of times your kids are a lot more intelligent than you want to give them credit for. You know what I'm saying? But it made our relationship a lot different. It made you be able to humanize your parent and see that they're not this figure over your life that you have to figure out how you're going to escape at some point, because that's what it feels like. How am I going to get rid of your ways, get away from your ways? Like, how can I just poof? You know what I'm saying? But once it becomes, you get to a point where you can see the human in your parent, then you can treat them a lot differently.
Parents and teachers should be transparent and open with their feelings. Then there's acceptance. When folks are accepting, people around them won't be afraid to be themselves or make mistakes. And the third requirement, according to Rogers, is empathy, or the ability to share others' feelings and reflect their meanings. Rogers thought of these traits as the nutrients required to make a personality grow into a healthy self-concept, that mix of thoughts and feelings that answer the fundamental question, who am I? So psychoanalytic and humanistic theories of personality were and are incredibly influential, even if one was a little sordid and the other a little sunshine and rainbows. But they didn't always lend themselves to clear measurement, and as empirical standards began to take hold in the mid-20th century, this became a major concern. How did we deal with that? Well, tune in next week when we explore some of the newer ways of looking at personality and how we started measuring it. Today, you learned about...
Yep, come on back next week so we can go ahead and transition over to the other information. Okay, baby? Let's do that. Let's do that. Let's do that. I just want to say, we all trying, we all here, we all doing as best as we can. And when I say all, it's the people who are actually doing this, right? Clearly not talking about who ain't doing it. They ain't doing it, so clearly not them. But no, for real, I just want to say, man, being a parent is not the easiest thing in the world, and also being the child to a parent is not always the easiest thing in the world. So y'all both are working to try to get this together, to stay on the same page. But the more human and the more of just another one of them that you can show your kid, your child, that you are, the better I feel. Yeah, that's what I feel. Sometimes, they gonna show their personality too. Like, you tell your kid you don't have something, they might find a way to get it for you. You know what I'm saying? Is it always the best way? No. I'm not saying, you gotta burden your child with every bit of details. But look, baby, your baby 5 years old, you telling your baby that you ain't got rent money this month because you was out and you was, hustling and getting your money, but the bill ended up being more than it needed to be. And you had to go and, make it do what it do. You had to go and ask the dad. You had to go and ask somebody else. You had to do this. You ain't got to get a kid the whole full breakdown like that, clearly. Even a 15-year-old, you ain't got to break it down like that either. But I think just be transparent, especially when your kids get of age to where they can fully understand a lot more. And you might have a kid that want to work. You know what I'm saying? And make sure you just make it clear that, hey, if you're going to work, it's not about just helping me with the bills just because you helping your mama. Like, I feel like include the kids on understanding what this is in general. And I don't think it's nothing wrong with you helping your kids understand responsibility. But then also, I feel like don't make the kid the second parent in the household. You know what I'm saying? I ain't saying do it that dirty. Like, let the kid still live and be a kid and grow and develop. But it's a balance that needs to be done for sure. All right, y'all have a good one. I'll catch y'all next week. Make sure you get in the comment section. Make sure you let me know what you thinking, how you feeling, and kind of some things that you may have done in your own relationship with your children to help balance it out, man. Because not every relationship is a good relationship with a parent, and with anybody for that matter, you know. So, yeah, all right, y'all have a good one. I'll catch y'all in the next one, and yeah. Oh, you want to catch me live? Make sure you go to the link down below in the description. If you want to catch me live, make sure you go down below in the description and click that link and hit the follow button. And make sure you have your notifications turned on so that you'll know when I go live. All right, y'all have a good one.